Welcome to your Dogcast, where we feature news just for dog lovers. Here's your Rover reporter, Mary Lou Davidson.
Hey, it's Mary Lou Davidson. I'm the Rover reporter. And today I'm excited to be talking to Penny Claus. She is a veterinarian. She's been in practice for more than 30 years down in Texas. And she has some stories to tell, great and small, about treating dogs through the course of her career. But what we're going to focus on is people and your first trip to the veterinarian when you have a puppy. Hey, Penny, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Mary Lou.
This is so fun and something I think we've always wanted to talk about because, you know, you get a puppy and usually the first visit will be the last round of puppy shots. And so you're so excited to bring your new puppy in. What kinds of things do pet parents need to know before their first visit, and what should they bring?
We would very much appreciate if pet parents would bring in any previous records from either other vet visits or from where they purchased the puppy. That helps us fill us in with the history of what has been done, and that way we can use that as a framework and what we would recommend on going forward from that point. Because sometimes when we see them, they haven't had shots and they thought they had, or they didn't have all their shots, and the owners are thinking they already were caught up. So just having that information, because we don't want to give them more shots than they need.
So the paperwork is key.
Exactly.
And I would imagine that when people have a puppy, they're really curious about the size. And, you know, how big do you think he's going to get? Is that a pretty common question?
It is. And now, if you have a purebred, that is a little bit easier to answer, but not exact, because there are differences between male and female. And let's say, for example, Chihuahuas. I've seen Chihuahuas that grow up to be like 2 pounds, and I've seen some that get up to 15, and that's without being overweight. So there's variation even within a breed. And when you're talking about mixed breeds, then if you know kind of what's part of that mix, you might be able to make a rough determination. But I always tell owners, time will tell. Sometimes we get fooled, either being larger or smaller than what we expect.
Sure. When people bring their dog in to see you, is it usually just the mom, just the dad, or do people come in pairs?
I would say about 25% we see the couple, sometimes the whole family.
Yikes.
Yeah, and it gets crowded in the room. But a lot of the time, I'd have to say the other 75% is one or the other. And it seems to be a high proportion men. We see a lot of women, but we do see a lot of men.
Okay. When they do come together, do you recommend that they decide in advance that one or the other will lead the conversation with the vet and the other should remain silent? or do they both chime in?
Oh, I have seen both of them chime in. I have seen them kind of start, especially if we're dealing with a sick dog, pointing fingers at each other because of what the other one did. And that's where it's like, we're caught in the middle. And it's like, I'll tell you what, you all just kind of work this out. We'll be back, to finish the exam. But it would be wonderful, not only in the exam, but if a pet has to be hospitalized, that there would be a contact person because that way we can streamline the visit better. And of course, questions are always welcome, but it is something that in a routine visit, hopefully those are decided beforehand. Lists are wonderful. Write things down that you want to make sure you ask, because I have a lot of people that forget things that they wish they had asked us, but that would help streamline it too. But if a pet is sick and hospitalized, just having one person, otherwise we are inundated with calls from all sorts of people, family members, that we can tell about the pet. We have to be careful, who we converse with, but that, I've had one family member call after another, and each one wants to hear the same thing. And we don't want to be rude and say, well, we already talked to so-and-so, but that's why it'd be nice if somebody was just designated.
For sure. A primary contact would alleviate some of the pressure on you.
Yes, and streamline things. Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of giving medication, some dogs are easier than others. Yes. How do you handle it if someone says, I need help with my monthly flea medication or my 90-day Bravecto, whatever the product is? Is that something that you offer to assist with?
Yes, we do. We want to make sure, especially with routine medications like that the pet is getting it, excuse me. And so our techs, we do have the owners bring it in, the techs give it. There are a few cases that I can recall just off the bat where that worked for a while. Then after a while, the pet got too aggressive, for us to give the medicine. And then you start talking about other forms of it to try to do what we can to help prevent them, from these things.
Right. And I personally have a dog that is, I wouldn't call him aggressive, but he's really not about socializing with other dogs.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of an embarrassment. But rather than risk an incident, I always call ahead, or back in regular times when we actually went inside.
Right.
I called ahead and they would open up another door and I would go through that door and sort of clandestinely get into our exam room. And I was embarrassed a little bit about it, but I felt that it was worth it for the safety of my dog and everyone else.
And that's good. I'm glad you had that viewpoint that you needed to, take those steps. And you're not the only one. So, dogs are dogs and they're going to act the way they want. And we have some control over that, but not entire. We do see a lot of aggressive dogs. Mm-hmm. And by assuring that, everybody's safe, you're being a great pet owner in that. Because we do have some pets that come into our clinic where, we've got to make sure that, we don't have anybody out in the lobby, that we can get them right into a room. And when they leave, we go and check for the owners, to see if they have a straight shot to the outside. Right. So that just helps keep everybody, safe. And it's very appreciated.
Yeah. And so I'm really kind of just saying this so that people aren't embarrassed and don't imagine that this time it's going to be okay. It's better to be safe than sorry and just take that extra step.
You bet. Yeah. Can I kind of add to that?
Absolutely.
Part of the conversation? Please, if there's ever been any history of your dog being aggressive or biting someone, please warn us. I don't know how many times I've been bit or one of my techs have been bit or a kennel worker, and the owners laugh it off and say, oh, yeah, he's done that before.
Oh, my gosh, that's terrible.
And a muzzle does not hurt the dog. And some people, for whatever reason, thinks it does. But believe me, it's a lot better to be safe than sorry. And not only for us, I have seen dogs get so aggravated and the owners try to step in. The owner gets bit because they can get to a point where they don't care who they bite. They're so angry.
Right.
So it's not just for us muzzling them. It's for the protection of the owner as well.
Right. The other thing I wanted to just bring up is we have a dog that, has hurt himself or has gotten sick or there's something wrong. And a lot of us have the mindset that it's kind of like when your car isn't working right, you take it to the dealership, you leave it, it gets fixed, and then you pick it up. And so we take our sick dog to the animal hospital, and we walk away thinking, well, hopefully when I pick him up, everything will be fine. But really, it's a veterinary practice, right? And so we're looking for the answers, but you don't have a magic wand.
Exactly. And you boiled that down very well, because we do run into expectations that far exceed reality when it comes to that. We're dealing with living systems that don't read a book in a lot of ways. In other words, the equation isn't 1 + 2 = 3. 1 + 2, depending on the symptoms, could equal any range of possibilities. In evaluating a hurt or sick pet does take I kind of describe it like getting pieces to a puzzle. The history is one piece, the exam is another piece, and then generally, depending on what's going on, you need x-rays or lab work or something to try to fill in, the picture so that we know more about what we're dealing with.
Right.
Unfortunately, there are some that are very health issues that are more complicated, and it takes getting more pieces to that puzzle, therefore more workup, and diagnostics and, treatments of some sort.
Yeah, and veterinary medicine has just evolved so immensely even in the last 10 years.
Yes.
With diagnostics and so on. It's great for us as owners to be able to actually have a solution. But I know it must be tough on your part because those things all cost money.
Yes.
And, it's not a public service. So dealing with the economics with pet owners must be tough too.
It is. And, we understand that especially with really sick dogs, and it's getting into really complicated type situations, that people have finances to consider. And in that, I usually recommend, I'll tell the owner what should be done and then see what can they do. And then just try to work with what tools the owner gives me to try to help the pet as best as possible. And I warn them too, not being able to do certain things, we're still going to be a little bit unknown what we're dealing with. And because of that, we don't know the full prognosis. But something that I don't know if pet owners are aware of is the pet insurances that are out there. They are gaining ground. They seem to be helping a lot of people. I see a lot of clients that they're glad they have it because they're able to use that to help them. And there's third-party type payers like Care Credit. It's kind of like a health-based, credit card that also helps give some owners a little more wiggle room to try to help their pet as best they can.
Right. That's awesome. I really hate to ask you this, but is there a pet insurance that you would recommend?
Oh, Lord, there's many out there, and they seem to be evolving and changing. And, I see them in my journals pop up, and every so often I see a list of what's out there and what they'll do and what they won't. But what it comes down to is the owner investigating the insurances and the different policies, because they're so different, as far as what they'll cover, what they'll help with. Some do well care visits. That helps, tremendously.
For sure.
But the younger you get the policy, the better, because there are, just like how we had in like human medicine, if you already have pre-existing conditions. So you have an older pet that already has a problem with something, they're not going to cover that. So the sooner the better. But it is something that is so complicated, and there's so many different variations and all that. I really can't say, oh, yeah, this one's great. This is the one I see used most often. I wish I could give that kind of advice, but it's still there's too much out there right now. Now, I don't want to steer somebody into something that is not right for them.
Right, right. So to sum it up, when you're visiting your veterinarian, you want to hopefully appoint a primary person to interact with the vet and give the information. You want to bring a list so that you don't forget anything. 9 times out of 10, you'll walk, as soon as you get in the car, you'll remember what you should have asked. But if you have a list, that should shortcut that. If your dog is maybe a little sketchy, maybe a little moody, let the veterinarian and the staff know so that they can make accommodations. Definitely alert them if there's been a biting incident. And remember that this is a partnership between you and your vet to heal your dog and keep your pet well. So follow their instructions if they give you a protocol for treatment.
Yes, please.
Penny, before you go, I wanted to ask you, we're looking at the big holidays coming up here. It's fourth quarter. Do you have some advice for pet owners to keep everybody safe during these festivities?
If I were to boil it down into one major point, is please do not feed your pet holiday food. Feeding table food has its risks anyway, but when you get the richness of the holiday food, and then you have visitors coming over and the dog begging, and everything. We, unfortunately, as a profession, when we see holidays that are coming, we expect to see really, really sick dogs, usually because of inflammation of the pancreas or pancreatitis, which can be very serious and be very costly in trying to help get settled down and try to get them back to health. So it's just better not to feed the dog people food.
Right. And kind of like enforcing that with your family and friends who might be at the table by saying you're picking up the vet bill if something happens.
Exactly. I've actually had some clients say that, when we're looking at their pet, because they didn't do it, but, they knew something like that had happened, because it'd be within usually 24 to 72 hours after the event that we see these sick dogs.
So sad and so preventable.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Well, Penny Claus, Dr. Penny Claus, thank you so much for joining us. It's been very helpful and informative, and we hope to talk to you again someday soon.
That'd be wonderful, and thank you again for inviting me. It's good talking with you.
Thanks. This has been the Rover Reporter.